I stumbled upon a forgotten secret in my childhood home, an ominous room tucked away in the deepest corners of my memories. It beckoned to me like a siren's call, an enigma shrouded in darkness. My curiosity, fueled by an insatiable desire to uncover the truth, compelled me to delve into the depths of this hidden chamber. Little did I know that my decision would unleash a torrent of nightmares that would forever haunt my soul. As I stepped into the room, an icy chill prickled my skin, sending shivers down my spine. The air felt heavy, laden with an unnameable malevolence. A single flickering light bulb, swinging precariously from the ceiling, cast eerie shadows that danced and twisted along the walls. The room was adorned with peeling wallpaper, its faded floral patterns barely recognizable beneath layers of neglect. Dust swirled in the air, like ethereal spirits trapped in an eternal dance. My heart raced as I noticed the peculiar objects scattered throughout the room. Strange, arcane symbols adorned the walls, etched in blood-red paint, their meaning lost to time. Rusty shackles hung ominously from the ceiling, their chains whispering macabre secrets to anyone who would listen. An assortment of decaying toys, their once cheerful countenances now twisted and contorted, lined a dusty shelf. Each one seemed to watch me with a malevolent gaze, their eyes gleaming with unholy sentience. But it was the mirror that dominated the room, an ancient looking glass that held a sinister reflection. The glass was warped and distorted, as if reflecting a parallel reality teeming with horrors. A palpable sense of dread washed over me as I approached the mirror, drawn inexorably closer to its eldritch allure. With trembling hands, I reached out to touch its surface, only to recoil in horror as icy tendrils of darkness crept from its depths, reaching out to claim my soul. Within the mirror's infinite abyss, I saw glimpses of tormented souls, their anguished cries resonating through the very fabric of my being. I saw twisted, malformed creatures, their gnarled bodies contorting in unimaginable ways. They whispered wicked incantations, their words weaving a tapestry of insanity in my mind. Madness encroached upon my thoughts, threatening to consume me whole. Time lost all meaning as I stood trapped within the unholy realm of that accursed mirror. Days blurred into nights, and my sanity teetered on the precipice of oblivion. Whispers filled my ears, tormenting me with their maleficent secrets. Shadows clung to me like vengeful specters, their touch searing my flesh with an icy burn. When I finally managed to tear myself away from the mirror's grip, I stumbled out of the room, a broken shell of my former self. But the horrors I witnessed did not release their hold on my mind. They followed me, lurking in the recesses of my subconscious, forever threatening to break free and drag me back into their maddening embrace. My life became a waking nightmare, plagued by visions that twisted reality itself. Every shadow seemed to hide unspeakable terrors, and every reflection in the mirror held a hint of the otherworldly. Sleep provided no solace, for dreams became tormentors, orchestrating vivid phantasmagorias that blurred the line between reality and delusion. I am forever haunted by the hidden room, its dark secrets etched into the very fabric of my existence. The nightmares continued to torment me, a perpetual descent into a realm of terror that has become my new reality. And now, in my fragile state of mind, I must warn others. Do not venture into the unknown depths of your past, for there are hidden rooms that contain pure nightmare fuel, waiting to claim unsuspecting souls like mine. I always knew there was something strange about the basement of my new house. From the moment I moved in, I could feel it, a palpable sense of unease that lingered in the air like a thick fog. But I shrugged it off as mere paranoia, an overactive imagination that came with living alone in a big, empty house. But one day, while I was rearranging some boxes, I stumbled upon a door I'd never noticed before. It was made of dark, rotting wood, its edges frayed and chipped. At first, I thought it must lead to a storage room or a crawl space, but the more I looked at it, the more I realized it was something else entirely. There was something about that door that called to me, something that stirred a deep, primal curiosity within me. It was as if some part of me knew what lay beyond, and was urging me to find out. So I took a deep breath, turned the rusty doorknob, and stepped inside. At first, everything seemed normal. The room was dimly lit, the air thick with the musty scent of old books and decaying wood. But as I walked deeper into the room, I began to feel something shift within me. It was as if the very fabric of reality was warping around me, twisting and bending in unnatural ways. And then I saw it, the portal to hell. It was a gaping hole in the fabric of space-time, a swirling vortex of darkness and despair that seemed to stretch on forever. As I stared into the abyss, I felt something claw at the edges of my mind, a primal terror that threatened to consume me whole. But I couldn't look away. I was transfixed, mesmerized by the sheer horror of what lay before me. And as I stood there, staring into the void, I felt something stir within me, a dark, twisted hunger that I couldn't ignore. It was as if the portal had awakened something inside me, something primal and savage and utterly inhuman. And as I stepped closer to the edge, I knew there was no turning back. I could feel the darkness calling to me, beckoning me closer, promising me power and knowledge beyond my wildest dreams. And as I stepped into the portal, I knew that I was descending into the depths of hell itself. The next thing I knew, I was standing in a vast, cavernous chamber, surrounded by writhing masses of flesh and bone. Demons howled in the distance, their voices a cacophony of pain and suffering, and I could feel their eyes upon me, their hunger for my soul. And as I stood there, alone and terrified, I knew that I had made a terrible mistake. The portal to hell was not a doorway to power or knowledge, but a gateway to the very depths of hell itself. And now, as I sit here, trembling and alone, I know that I will never escape, for I am trapped here in this dark, twisted realm, surrounded by the horrors that lurk in the shadows. And as I close my eyes, I can hear them whispering my name, their voices a dark symphony of madness and despair. I discovered a mysterious door in the basement, and it led to hell, and now I am lost forever in its depths. I've always been a fan of horror movies, so when I stumbled upon an old VHS tape in the attic of my new home, I was intrigued. The label simply read, Home Video Number 37, and it looked like it hadn't been touched in years. Despite feeling a bit apprehensive, I decided to pop it into my VHS player and see what was on it. The first few minutes were just static and white noise, which didn't surprise me considering the age of the tape. But then, the image cleared up and I saw a dark, shadowy figure standing in what appeared to be an old, abandoned house. The camera was shaky and the lighting was poor, but I could make out a figure in the distance. As I continued to watch, the figure started to move closer to the camera. My heart started to race as I realized that it was a person wearing a mask. The mask was terrifying, with a twisted grin and empty eyes that seemed to stare right through me. As the person got closer, I could hear their breathing and the sound of their footsteps. My whole body was tense with fear, and I realized that I couldn't look away from the screen. It was like I was being drawn into the horror unfolding in front of me. The person in the mask started to speak, but the words were muffled and distorted. They sounded like they were coming from deep within the mask, and I couldn't understand what they were saying. But then, the figure started to move again, and the camera followed it as it made its way through the abandoned house. The rooms were dark and musty, with cobwebs covering the walls and dust coating everything. The figure moved slowly, deliberately, as if it was searching for something. And then I saw it. A woman's body, lying on the ground in a pool of blood. The figure in the mask stood over the body for a moment, and then it turned to face the camera. The mask seemed to be staring directly at me, and I felt like I was going to be sick. The figure started to walk toward the camera, and I knew that it was coming for me. Suddenly, the screen went black, and the only sound was the whirring of the VHS player. I sat there in stunned silence, unable to move or even breathe. What had I just watched? Was it real, or just a sick joke? I tried to eject the tape from the VHS player, but it wouldn't budge. The tape seemed to be stuck, as if it didn't want to let go. I started to panic, feeling like I was trapped in some kind of nightmare. That was when I heard the sound of footsteps, coming from somewhere inside the house. I froze, feeling like the figure in the mask was coming for me. I wanted to run, to hide, to do anything to escape the horror that I'd unleashed, but it was too late. I discovered an old VHS tape in the attic, and I wish I hadn't watched it, because now I know that the horror is real, and it's coming for me. I found a hidden room in my house, and I wish I never had. At first, it seemed like a thrilling discovery. As I was exploring the old, dusty attic, I stumbled upon a small door hidden behind a stack of boxes. The door was barely visible, and I doubt I would have ever noticed it if it wasn't for my curiosity. I pushed the door open and peered inside, only to find a narrow staircase leading down into the darkness. Despite feeling a chill run down my spine, I couldn't resist the temptation to explore further. I grabbed a flashlight and began my descent. The stairs creaked beneath my weight as I made my way down. The air grew colder, and the musty smell of age and decay filled my nostrils. I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, I found myself in a small room that was completely bare, save for a single chair in the center. The room was dark, but I could see something moving in the shadows. At first, I thought it was just my imagination playing tricks on me, but then I heard a soft whisper that sent shivers down my spine. It was a voice, but not one that belonged to any living being. The voice seemed to be coming from everywhere and nowhere all at once. I tried to run, but my feet wouldn't move. The whisper grew louder, and I could feel a cold breath on the back of my neck. Panic set in, and I realized that I was trapped in this hidden room. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. I lost track of time, and my mind began to play tricks on me. I heard the whispering voice constantly, and I could see shadows moving in the corners of my eyes. I was no longer alone in the hidden room. I could feel a presence with me, watching me, waiting for me to let my guard down. I could hear whispers and laughter, and I knew that whatever was with me was not human. I screamed and begged for release, but my pleas fell on deaf ears. My mind began to crumble, and I could no longer tell reality from illusion. The whispers became screams, and the shadows became monsters. I found a hidden room in my house, and I wish I never had. I am trapped here, alone with the darkness and the whispers. I know that I will never escape, and I fear that I will never find peace. I shouldn't have gone into that antique shop, but I was bored, and it looked like an interesting place to kill some time. I was browsing through the shelves when I saw it. A doll. A strange-looking doll. It was old, its clothes tattered, and its porcelain skin was cracked, but there was something about it that made it stand out from the rest. As I picked it up, a chill ran down my spine. It was as if the doll was alive, and it was watching me. I quickly put it back on the shelf and left the shop. but something inside me made me go back. I had to have it. The moment I brought it home, strange things started happening. At first, it was just little things. I would come home and the doll would be in a different place than where I had left it. I thought it was just my imagination, but as time passed, it got worse. I started hearing whispers at night, and I felt like someone was watching me. Every time I turned around, the doll would be staring at me with its beady eyes. It was as if it was alive, and it was trying to communicate with me. I tried to ignore it, but it was impossible. The doll was always there, always watching me, always whispering. I started having nightmares, and every time I woke up, the doll would be next to me, staring at me with its lifeless eyes. I knew I had to get rid of it, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. It was as if the doll had some sort of hold over me. It was controlling me, and I couldn't escape its grasp. One day, I woke up, and the doll was gone. I searched my entire apartment, but it was nowhere to be found. I thought it was finally over, but I was wrong. That night, I heard scratching at my bedroom door. I was too scared to get up and investigate, so I just lay there, frozen in fear. The scratching continued, and then I heard a voice. It was the voice of a child, but it was distorted, like it was coming from a different dimension. It said, "I'm still here. You can't get rid of me." I knew then that I had made a mistake. I shouldn't have bought that doll. It was alive, and it was haunting me. I don't know what to do. I'm terrified, and I don't know if I'll ever be able to escape its grasp. I found an old journal buried in my backyard, and its words turned my life into a nightmare. It was a stormy night when I stumbled upon the journal. The rain poured relentlessly, hammering against the windows as if it desperately sought entry. The lightning illuminated the sky with brief moments of eerie brightness, casting long, distorted shadows around the room. I had always been intrigued by the mysteries of the past, so when my shovel struck an unexpected object while tending to my garden, my curiosity got the better of me. As I unearthed the journal from the damp soil, a chill crawled up my spine. The cover was weathered and worn, with the title barely discernible, "The Darkest Secrets." Despite the haunting aura it exuded, I couldn't resist the temptation to uncover the forbidden words within. I retreated to the safety of my study, the creaking floorboards echoing through the desolate house. The flickering candlelight seemed feeble against the encroaching darkness, and the howling wind outside only intensified the ominous atmosphere. As I carefully opened the journal, the pungent scent of decay filled the room, as if it had absorbed the passage of time. The first page was filled with elegant calligraphy, the words etched with meticulous precision. It spoke of a tormented soul, trapped within the confines of its own mind. The author, whose name remained unknown, chronicled their descent into madness, recounting nightmares and hallucinations that bled into their waking hours. The more I read, the more I became entangled in the author's twisted reality. Days turned into nights, and nights turned into a never-ending cycle of insomnia and fear. The journal seemed to possess a malevolent power, a force that fed off my vulnerability. Its contents invaded my thoughts, unraveling the fabric of my sanity. Shadows danced at the periphery of my vision. Whispered voices filled the empty rooms, and a constant feeling of being watched consumed me. As I ventured deeper into the journal, the entries became more disturbing. The author wrote of a ritual, a gateway to another realm that promised answers to the mysteries of existence. They described the incantations and sacrifices required, but my better judgment screamed for me to stop. Yet, the allure of forbidden knowledge grew stronger with each passing page. One fateful night, consumed by an insatiable curiosity, I succumbed to the author's words. I prepared the ritual as instructed, my hands trembling with a mixture of fear and anticipation. As the final incantation left my lips, the room plunged into darkness, the very air crackling with a malefic energy. A portal materialized before me, a swirling vortex of nightmares and despair. In that moment, regret flooded my being, but it was too late. The horrors from beyond the veil clawed their way into my reality, their vile presence invading every corner of my existence. My home transformed into a labyrinth of terror, the walls dripping with blood and the air reeking of decay. The faces of the damned materialized in every mirror, tormenting me with their hollow eyes and twisted smiles. Now, I am trapped in this waking nightmare, forever haunted by the words of the journal. The line between reality and delusion is blurred beyond recognition, and I wander through the twisted corridors of my mind, searching for an escape that may never come. The journal's pages continue to turn, chronicling my descent into a darkness from which there is no return. Beware the words you uncover, for they may be the key that unlocks the darkest recesses of your soul, turning your life into an eternal nightmare. The shrill ringing of the telephone broke the eerie silence of my small apartment. It was late at night, and I was alone, nestled in the comforting solitude of my home. With a hint of trepidation, I picked up the receiver, not expecting anything out of the ordinary. Little did I know that this innocent act would plunge me into a nightmare from which there seemed to be no escape. "Hello?" I said, my voice trembling slightly. Static crackled on the other end, and a cold chill ran down my spine. I could feel something was terribly wrong. "Who is this?" I asked, my voice quivering with a mix of fear and curiosity. A voice, distorted and ethereal, whispered through the line, as if carried on an icy wind. "Do you remember me?" It hissed. My heart skipped a beat. The voice seemed familiar, but I couldn't place it. "Who are you? What do you want?" I stammered, my mind racing with apprehension. The voice chuckled, a haunting sound that sent shivers down my spine. "I am someone you once knew, someone you thought was gone forever." Images flashed through my mind, memories of a loved one who had passed away many years ago. Could this really be them, reaching out from beyond the grave? I struggled to comprehend the impossible. "What do you want from me?" I managed to utter, my voice barely audible. "I want revenge," the voice whispered, filled with a malevolence that was palpable even through the phone line. "You wronged me, and now you shall pay." Panic gripped me as I desperately tried to recall any transgressions I might have committed. What had I done to deserve this horrifying visitation? The voice's accusatory tone seemed to seep into my very soul. Days turned into nights, and the calls continued, each one more menacing than the last. Sleep became an elusive luxury, for I feared the chilling ring of the telephone more than anything. The voice would speak in hushed tones, recounting my darkest secrets and hidden sins. It knew things about me that no one else could possibly know. The torment wore me down, driving me to the brink of madness. Every ring sent me spiraling deeper into a nightmarish abyss. The boundaries between the living and the dead blurred, and I found myself questioning my own sanity. Determined to find answers, I sought the help of paranormal experts and conducted countless hours of research. My investigations led me to a forgotten ritual, one that could potentially sever the connection between the living and the dead. But as the deadline approached, dread enveloped me like a suffocating fog. The final call came, its arrival heralded by a deafening silence. My hands trembled as I picked up the phone, steeling myself for what lay on the other end. "Your time is up," the voice hissed, its tone dripping with malicious triumph. "Now you shall face the consequences." Before I could react, the line went dead. The room plunged into darkness, and an icy breeze brushed against my skin. Shadows danced on the walls, their twisted forms mirroring the terror in my heart. I was never the same after that night. The experience left me broken, haunted by a force I could not comprehend. The phone calls ceased, but the scars they left behind were indelible. The fear of what lay beyond the grave followed me, an ever-present spectre. Now, I live in constant dread of answering the phone. Each ring sends me spiraling back into that living nightmare, forever trapped in a web of fear and uncertainty. I can only pray that one day I will find peace, that the echoes of those bone-chilling calls will fade into distant memory. But until then, I remain a prisoner of the supernatural, forever tormented by the ghostly whispers from beyond the grave. I started seeing a strange figure outside my window every night. At first, I thought it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. But then, as the nights went on, the figure became more and more real. It started off as just a dark shadow in the corner of my eye, a flicker of movement outside my window. But as the days passed, it began to take on a more distinct shape. It was tall and thin, with long, spindly arms and legs that seemed to stretch on forever. Its head was misshapen and featureless, like a distorted mask. At first, I tried to brush it off as a trick of the light, a product of my overactive imagination. But then it began to move. Every night, it would stand outside my window, watching me with its hollow gaze. It would sway back and forth, like a tree in a strong wind, as if it were trying to hypnotize me. I tried to ignore it, to convince myself that it wasn't real, but the figure wouldn't go away. It seemed to be haunting me, stalking me in my dreams and my waking hours. I could feel its presence everywhere I went, lurking just out of sight. As time went on, the figure grew more and more insistent. It began to whisper to me in the dead of night, calling my name in a voice that was at once seductive and terrifying. It promised me secrets and forbidden knowledge, if only I would let it in. I tried to resist, but the figure was too powerful. It consumed me, body and soul, until I was nothing but a puppet in its hands. I could feel it moving through me, controlling my every thought and action. In the end, I knew there was no escape. The figure had won. It had taken me over completely, and there was nothing left of the person I once was. I was its plaything now, a mere pawn in its twisted game. And so, I stand here, staring out my window, watching as the figure takes on a new victim. It smiles at me, a crooked grin that fills me with dread, for I know that soon it will come for me again, and this time there will be no turning back. I never believed in ghosts or the supernatural. I thought all the stories were just tales told to scare children at night. But that was before I spent a night in the haunted corn maze. It was a typical autumn evening when my friends and I decided to check out the local corn maze. It was advertised as a fun and spooky attraction with scarecrows, animatronics, and actors dressed in creepy costumes lurking in the shadows. We thought it would be a good way to get into the Halloween spirit. As we entered the maze, the sun began to set behind us, casting long shadows across the field. The corn stalks towered above us, rustling in the breeze, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The maze seemed much bigger than I had anticipated, and I quickly realized that getting lost was a real possibility. As we made our way through the maze, we encountered several spooky scenes, including a graveyard filled with fake tombstones, a scarecrow that seemed to come alive, and an old abandoned farmhouse that looked like it belonged in a horror movie. Each time, I laughed nervously, thinking it was all just part of the show. But then, things started to get really scary. I heard strange noises coming from the corn stalks, like something was moving through them. At first, I thought it was just an actor in a costume, but the sounds were too loud and too real. Suddenly, I heard a roar that made my blood run cold. It was like nothing I had ever heard before, a deep and guttural sound that seemed to be coming from something massive. I turned around and saw a giant monster that towered over the cornstalks, its eyes glowing in the darkness. I froze in terror as the monster charged towards us, its massive arms swinging wildly. My friends and I scattered in different directions, trying to find a way out of the maze. I could hear my heart pounding in my chest as I blindly ran through the cornstalks, trying to find my way back to the entrance. But the monster was relentless, and it seemed to be everywhere at once. I could hear its heavy footsteps behind me, and I knew that if I didn't find a way out soon, I was going to be its next victim. Finally, after what felt like hours of running, I stumbled out of the maze and collapsed on the ground, gasping for air. I looked up and saw my friends, all of us shaken and terrified, but alive. I never went back to that corn maze again, but the memory of that night haunts me to this day. I never thought I would believe in ghosts or monsters, but that night, I learned that there are some things that are beyond our understanding, and some horrors that we can never escape. I thought I was alone in the forest, but I wasn't. I was on a hiking trip with a few friends, but I'd wandered off by myself to take some pictures of the breathtaking scenery. As I was walking deeper into the woods, I noticed that the trees were becoming thicker and the underbrush was growing more tangled. It wasn't long before I realized I was lost. At first, I wasn't scared. I thought I could find my way back to the trail, but as the sun began to set, panic set in. I searched frantically for any signs of civilization, but all I found were more trees. As I trudged through the darkness, I heard something. At first, it was just a whisper, so quiet I could barely hear it, but it grew louder, more insistent, until I could make out what it was saying.
"Come here,"
the voice whispered.
"Come closer."
I stumbled and fell, scraping my knees on the rough ground. I tried to get up, but something was holding me down. It was like a pair of invisible hands pressing me into the earth. The voice was louder now, right next to my ear.
"Come here."
It hissed.
"Come closer."
I tried to scream, but nothing came out. I was paralyzed with fear. I knew I was going to die. Suddenly, the pressure was gone. I scrambled to my feet and ran blindly through the forest, tripping over roots and branches until I stumbled onto the trail. When I finally made it back to camp, my friends were gathered around the fire, roasting marshmallows. They looked up as I stumbled into the clearing, my clothes torn and my face covered in dirt.
"What happened to you?"
One of them asked. I tried to tell them what had happened, but my voice was hoarse and the words came out in a jumbled mess. They didn't believe me. They thought I was making it up, that I had fallen and hit my head. But I know what I heard. I know that I was not alone in the forest that night, and I know that the voice is still out there, waiting for its next victim. I've always been fascinated by the paranormal, the idea that there might be something beyond our world, something unseen, has always intrigued me. So, when my friends suggested we try to contact the dead with a Ouija board, I was all in. We gathered in my friend's attic, a dark, dusty place with only a single flickering candle to light the room. We sat around the board, fingers resting on the planchette, and began to ask questions. At first, nothing happened. We asked if anyone was there, but the planchette didn't move. We tried again, asking if there were any spirits present, and still there was no response. But then, something changed. Planchette began to move on its own, slowly at first, but then with increasing speed. We asked the spirit to identify itself, and it spelled out the name, Zozo. I had heard of Zozo before. It was said to be a malevolent entity, a demon that could possess those foolish enough to try to contact it. But I didn't believe in that kind of thing. I thought it was all just superstition. We continued to ask Zozo questions, and it seemed to be answering them accurately. It knew things about us that we hadn't told anyone. It knew our secrets, our fears, our weaknesses, and then things started to get really strange. The planchette began to move faster and faster until it was flying across the board. The candle flickered wildly, casting weird shadows on the walls. I could feel a cold breeze blowing through the room, even though the windows were shut. Suddenly, I felt a presence in the room with us. It was like something was watching us, waiting for us to make a mistake. I could feel its cold breath on the back of my neck. And then, the planchette spelled out a message that chilled me to the bone. I am not Zozo. I am something much older, much darker. You have awakened me, and now I will never leave you. I tried to move my fingers off the planchette, but they wouldn't budge. It was like something was holding them in place. I looked around the room, but I couldn't see anything. It was like the darkness had become solid. And then I heard a voice. It was whispering in my ear, a low, guttural sound that made my blood run cold. It spoke a language I didn't understand, but the meaning was clear. I was in grave danger. I don't remember how we managed to break the connection with the Ouija board, but suddenly we were all standing, the board and planchette scattered across the floor. We looked at each other, wide-eyed with terror, and then we heard it, a deep, malevolent laughter coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. It filled the room, echoing off the walls, and I knew then that we had made a terrible mistake. We had opened a door that should never have been opened, and something evil had answered. I was exploring the abandoned hospital, armed only with a flashlight and a sense of curiosity. As I crept through the dark corridors, the eerie silence was broken only by the sound of my own footsteps echoing off the walls. The air was thick with a musty smell, and I could see dust and cobwebs covering every surface. It was as if the hospital had been frozen in time, left to decay and rot away in the years since it had been abandoned. But as I turned a corner, my flashlight beam fell on something that made my blood run cold. There, in the middle of the hallway, was a figure. It was shrouded in darkness, but I could tell that it was tall and thin, with long, spindly limbs that seemed to stretch out endlessly into the shadows. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. I tried to back away, but it was as if my feet were rooted to the spot. The figure began to move, slowly at first, but then picking up speed as it started to chase after me. I ran, my flashlight beam bouncing wildly as I sprinted down the hallway. But no matter how fast I ran, the figure was always right behind me, its ragged breathing echoing in my ears. As I turned another corner, I saw a door ahead of me, and I knew that it was my only chance. I threw myself at it, yanking desperately at the handle, and with a creaking groan, it opened. I stumbled inside, slamming the door shut behind me, and leaned against it, gasping for breath. But as I looked around the room, I realized with horror that I was trapped. The walls were covered in strange symbols and glyphs, etched deep into the stone. The air was thick, with a sickly sweet smell, like rotting fruit, and in the center of the room was a dark, gaping hole, stretching down into the depths below. And as I stood there, trembling with fear, I knew that I was not alone. Something sinister was lurking in the darkness, waiting for its chance to strike, and I was trapped with it, with no way out. I woke up in the middle of the night, gasping for breath as a cold sweat covered my trembling body. Confusion swirled in my mind as I tried to shake off the remnants of a vivid nightmare that clung to my consciousness. I glanced around the dimly lit room, searching for solace in the familiar surroundings, but what I saw next froze the blood in my veins. As I turned my gaze toward the full-length mirror, an overwhelming sense of unease gripped my heart. There, Within the reflection was my own face staring back at me, but it was twisted into a grotesque smile that stretched unnaturally from ear to ear. My heart skipped a beat, and a shiver ran down my spine. My hand trembled as I reached out to touch the mirror, hoping it was some macabre trick of the light. But as my fingers made contact with the cold surface, I felt a strange tingling sensation, as if an invisible force were pulling me into the depths of that malevolent reflection. Fear and curiosity warred within me, but my feet remained rooted to the spot, unable to look away. The longer I stared, the more I became aware of the subtle changes. The room behind me faded into darkness, leaving only the mirror and its terrifying inhabitant illuminated. My reflection's eyes seemed to glow with an unnatural light, casting an eerie, otherworldly pallor over its features. Its smile widened further, stretching beyond the boundaries of what should have been possible. I could almost hear a mocking laughter emanating from its lips, haunting my every thought. I blinked, hoping to dispel the terrifying apparition before me. But when I opened my eyes, it was still there, its smile growing even wider. Panic welled up inside me, choking my throat. As I realized the reflection was moving independently of me, it tilted its head, studying me with a predatory curiosity that sent shivers down my spine. I was no longer in control of my own reflection. It had taken on a sinister life of its own. Unable to tear my gaze away, I watched in horror as my reflection extended a hand through the mirror's surface, its fingers elongating into razor-sharp talons. The glass cracked under the strain, spiderweb fractures spreading outward in a sinister pattern. It was as if the barrier between our worlds was disintegrating, and I was about to be pulled into an abyss of unspeakable terror. Fear consumed me, and I stumbled backward, desperately trying to escape the clutches of that twisted reflection. But with each step I took, the mirror seemed to draw closer, its malevolent presence invading my very soul. The room was now suffocatingly dark, the air thick with an oppressive silence broken only by the sound of my ragged breaths. In a final act of desperation, I closed my eyes and plunged my hands over my ears, attempting to block out the nightmare before me. But even in the darkness of my own mind, I could still feel its chilling presence, its mocking laughter echoing through the recesses of my consciousness. The terror of that night lingers with me to this day. I am haunted by the memory of my own reflection, forever distorted and twisted into a malevolent entity. I dare not look into a mirror anymore, fearful that the smile I once wore may never truly be mine again. The boundary between reality and nightmare blurred that night, leaving me forever changed, forever haunted by the terrifying grin that stared back at me. I woke up in darkness, a cold, clammy darkness that enveloped me like a shroud. My senses slowly started to come back to me. I felt a hard, metal surface underneath me, and the unmistakable smell of formaldehyde filled my nostrils. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I tried to scream, but my mouth was dry, and my voice was weak. Panic set in as I realized where I was. I was in a morgue. How did I get here? The last thing I remember was being hit by a car. I was walking home from work when I heard the screech of tires and everything went black. I must have been pronounced dead, but now I was awake and I couldn't move. I tried to lift my arms, but they felt heavy, like they were made of lead. I tried to sit up, but my body wouldn't respond. Fear took hold of me as I realized that I was trapped in my own body. The silence of the morgue was deafening. The only sound I could hear was the beating of my own heart. I started to feel a sense of dread, as if something was watching me. The fear inside me grew stronger as I realized that I wasn't alone. I could hear the sound of footsteps echoing through the hallways. It sounded like someone was walking towards me. The door to the morgue opened slowly, and a figure stepped inside. The person was wearing a lab coat and a surgical mask. They approached my table and stood over me. I tried to speak, but my voice was still weak. The figure didn't say anything, but I could feel their eyes on me. They reached out and grabbed my arm. The touch was cold and sent shivers down my spine. The figure leaned in close, and I could feel their breath on my face. I could see the outline of their eyes through the mask, and they seemed to be studying me. The fear inside me was overwhelming, and I wanted to run, but I couldn't move. The figure leaned even closer, and I could feel their lips brush against my ear.
"I know you're not dead,"
the figure whispered.
"I'm going to fix that."
The figure stepped back, and I could hear them moving around the room. I tried to move again, but it was no use. I was trapped, helpless, and alone. I could hear the sound of metal tools clanking together, and the smell of antiseptic filled the air. Suddenly, the figure reappeared, holding a long, sharp scalpel in their hand. They walked towards me, and I could feel the fear inside me turn into pure terror. The figure lifted the scalpel and brought it down towards my chest. I woke up screaming. I was in a hospital bed, surrounded by doctors and nurses. They told me that I'd been in a coma for weeks, and that I had suffered severe injuries from the car accident. The terror of the morgue still clung to me, and I could feel my heart racing. But I was alive, and that was all that mattered. Years have passed since that fateful night, but the fear of the morgue still haunts me. I don't know if what I experienced was real or just a nightmare, but the thought of waking up in a morgue, unable to move, is a fear that I will never forget. I woke up with a pounding heart, my body drenched in cold sweat. The room I found myself in was unfamiliar, eerie, and suffused with an unsettling aura. Panic engulfed me as I realized that something was horribly wrong. The air was heavy, with an inexplicable sense of dread, and a thick fog clung to the walls, obscuring my vision. It was as if I had been transported to a parallel dimension of pure terror. I stumbled out of bed, hoping to find some semblance of normality. But as I ventured into the hallway, the walls seemed to close in on me, the grotesque paintings leering and warping before my eyes. The once familiar portraits of family and friends transformed into grotesque visages, their eyes hollow and soulless. Each step I took echoed through the corridor, as if the house itself was taunting me, mocking my futile attempts to escape. I tried to calm myself, to rationalize this nightmarish reality, but reason eluded me as I encountered distorted versions of the world I once knew. The furniture twisted and contorted, growing gnarled and jagged edges that seemed poised to attack at any moment. The once beautiful flower garden outside my window had withered, its once vibrant petals now reduced to a sickly black hue, with thorny tendrils snaking through the ground. I felt a chilling presence in this twisted realm, an intangible force that seemed to feed off my fear. Whispers of malevolent intent echoed through the darkness, filling my mind with disturbing thoughts. Shadows danced in the corners of my vision, shifting and writhing with an eerie sentience. I couldn't escape the feeling that unseen eyes were watching my every move, relishing in my growing terror. Time lost all meaning as the hours stretched into what felt like an eternity. Sleep eluded me, for fear of what twisted dreams awaited in the abyss of my subconscious. The boundaries between reality and nightmare blurred, leaving me in a constant state of unease. I longed to wake up, to escape from this parallel dimension that had become my personal hell. Days turned into weeks, and the horror intensified. Each passing moment brought new terrors, testing the limits of my sanity. I became a shell of my former self, consumed by paranoia and despair. Every thought, every action was tainted by the lurking terror that surrounded me. I clung to a thread of hope, praying for a miracle that would break me free from this prison of fear. But as the days dragged on, my hope dwindled, and the darkness closed in. I was trapped, lost in a parallel dimension of pure terror, with no escape in sight. The once familiar world had become a twisted nightmare, and I had become a mere plaything for the malevolent forces that ruled this realm. And so, I remain here, trapped in a perpetual cycle of horror, haunted by the nightmares that plague my mind. I'm a prisoner in this parallel dimension, forever tormented by the terrors that lurk within, with no hope of release. The terror consumes me, body and soul, as I drift further into the depths of madness, lost in this realm of unrelenting horror. I woke up to the sound of footsteps echoing through the empty hallway outside my bedroom. The house was supposed to be empty, as I lived alone. I tried to shake off the unease creeping up my spine, chalking it up to a vivid dream. But deep down, I knew something was horribly wrong. The air grew heavy, and a chill enveloped the room. I hesitated before mustering the courage to step out of bed. As I made my way toward the hallway, the creaking of the floorboards intensified, as if someone was intentionally making their presence known. Dread clung to me like a suffocating blanket. Hesitant, I pushed open the door and peered into the dimly lit corridor. Shadows danced on the walls, casting twisted shapes that seemed to mock me. My heart pounded in my chest as I whispered my own name into the darkness. "Who's there?" A raspy voice responded, chilling me to the core. "Do you not remember me? It's been so long, my dear friend." A shiver ran down my spine, memories flooding back from the depths of my mind. It couldn't be. I thought I had left my childhood imaginary friend behind, buried within the recesses of forgotten memories. But now, it seemed as though it had returned, and it was far from friendly. The voice grew louder. Whispers slithered into my ears, planting seeds of doubt and despair. I felt a cold breath on the back of my neck, and the sensation of bony fingers grazing my skin. Panic consumed me, threatening to drown my sanity. I turned and saw a figure emerging from the shadows. Its once playful features had twisted into something grotesque, a caricature of the friend I had once known. Its eyes burned with malice, reflecting a darkness that seemed bottomless. "I've come to reclaim what was rightfully mine," it hissed, its voice resonating with an otherworldly power. "You thought you could forget me, but I've always been here. I am your oldest companion, your deepest fear." Paralyzed with terror, I watched as it approached, its movements erratic and unnatural. I pleaded for release from this nightmare, but my voice was caught in my throat. I was trapped, caught in a twisted game of its design. Days turned into nights, and nights blurred into a timeless abyss. I was tormented, taunted, and pushed to the brink of madness. My mind became a labyrinth, and every turn led me deeper into the clutches of this monstrous creation from my past. But within the darkest corners of despair, a flicker of resilience ignited. I mustered the last remnants of my courage and fought against the suffocating grip of fear. With each step, I confronted the grotesque manifestation of my forgotten friend, refusing to surrender to its torment. As the final battle reached its crescendo, I stared into its deranged eyes and whispered, "You may have been a part of my past, but you have no power over my present. I banish you back to the depths from whence you came." With those words, the air crackled with energy, and the malevolent presence dissipated. The house grew silent, and the weight of its influence lifted from my shoulders. I took a deep breath, savoring the sweet taste of freedom, but the scars of that harrowing encounter would forever mark my psyche. Days turned into weeks, and the memory of my childhood imaginary friend's return haunted my thoughts. I sought solace in therapy, trying to unravel the tangled web of my subconscious and the reasons behind its resurrection. The therapist listened intently, her empathetic gaze offering a glimmer of hope. Together, we delved into the depths of my past, unearthing forgotten traumas and unresolved conflicts. It became clear that my imaginary friend had been a coping mechanism, a creation of my young mind to shield me from the harsh realities of my upbringing. As I confronted these painful truths, I found strength in self-reflection and the support of loved ones. I learned to separate the imaginary from the real, understanding that my friend's return was a manifestation of my own fears rather than a malevolent entity. But just when I believed the chapter was closed, a faint whisper echoed in the wind, and a chilling sensation crawled up my spine. My heart sank as I realized that my imaginary friend had left an indelible mark on my soul, one that could never be fully erased. Though the entity itself had vanished, its legacy remained, forever imprinted on my psyche. It served as a reminder of the darkness that resides within us all, a cautionary tale of the delicate balance between imagination and reality. I carry that experience with me, forever changed but determined to rise above the shadows that once consumed me. The ordeal taught me to face my fears head on, to acknowledge the power they hold, and to refuse their control over my life. Now, whenever doubt or terror creeps into my thoughts, I summon the strength I found within myself during that fateful encounter. I remind myself that the past is just a ghost, a spectre that cannot define me unless I allow it to. And so, I press forward, embracing the light that shines through the cracks in my once shattered spirit. The scars may remain, but they serve as a testament to my resilience, a reminder that even the darkest nightmares can be overcome, and that the power to heal lies within ourselves. I had always believed that living in a peaceful suburban neighborhood would shield me from the horrors of the world, but oh, how wrong I was. It all started when the Smiths moved in next door, a seemingly ordinary family with a smiling, friendly face as their patriarch. Mr. Jenkins, as he preferred to be called, was a man in his late 50s. His silver hair, neatly combed, gave him an air of sophistication. His deep-set eyes were always crinkled at the edges, as if he carried an eternal secret. But it was his smile that sent shivers down my spine. Whenever our paths crossed, Mr. Jenkins would flash his pearly whites, the corners of his lips stretching unnaturally wide. It was the smile of a man who had mastered the art of deception, masking something far more sinister beneath its facade. His teeth were perfect, immaculate, and yet the sight of them made my stomach churn. Curiosity consumed me, and I found myself peering through the curtains, observing his every move. He was meticulous, a creature of habit. Each morning, he would leave his house, dressed in a suit as sharp as a blade, and disappear into the shadows of the world. And each evening, he would return, wearing that unnerving grin. As days turned into weeks, my obsession grew, and I began unraveling the mysteries of Mr. Jenkins. I followed him on one of his evening strolls, keeping a safe distance. He walked with purpose, heading towards the outskirts of town, where the world grew darker, more obscure. The moon cast an eerie glow upon the desolate landscape as I watched him enter an abandoned warehouse. My heart pounded against my chest, its rhythm echoing in my ears. Gathering all my courage, I inched closer, peering through a cracked window. What I saw would haunt me for the rest of my days. Inside, the warehouse was transformed into a macabre gallery of twisted horrors. The walls were adorned with photographs, snapshots of innocent faces, their eyes wide with terror, their souls consumed by an unspeakable evil. It was a gallery of victims, each one captured in their final moments. But what struck me the hardest were the faces I recognized. Neighbors, acquaintances, friends, people who had disappeared without a trace, leaving behind unanswered questions and grieving families. Their disappearance had been a mystery to all, but now the pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. A cold realization washed over me. I was not an observer anymore. I had stumbled upon a truth that threatened to tear my fragile existence apart. Panic gripped me, but I knew I had to act swiftly. I turned to leave, my heart racing, when suddenly a bony hand clamped onto my shoulder. Mr. Jenkins stood before me, his eyes gleaming with a chilling malice that sent a shiver down my spine. The smile that had once unsettled me now seemed like a ravenous predator's grin. "You shouldn't have seen this," he whispered, his voice filled with a sinister calmness. "But don't worry, my friend. You won't remember a thing." His touch seared through my body, his malevolence seeping into my very being. Darkness consumed me as my consciousness faded away. When I awoke, disoriented and confused, I found myself back in my house. The sun streamed through the windows, but the tranquility of the suburban neighborhood felt like a cruel joke. The memories of that night remained locked away, as if my mind had been tampered with, as if I were just a marionette controlled by an unseen puppeteer. Yet, a nagging sense of unease remained, an instinctual fear of the smiling neighbor next door. And deep down, I knew that his chilling secret, the gallery of victims, still lurked within the recesses of my mind, waiting to be unleashed. My neighbor's smile had become the embodiment of a waking nightmare, a torment I could never escape. The abandoned amusement park that held the key to my family's dark legacy beckoned to me with an eerie allure. It stood desolate and decrepit, its once vibrant colors now faded and chipped away. The overgrown vegetation swallowed the dilapidated rides and attractions, casting a haunting shadow over the forgotten memories that lingered within. As the last surviving member of my family, I was drawn to this place by an inexplicable force, a gnawing curiosity that gnarled at my soul. Legends whispered of a curse that plagued our bloodline, a curse born from an unspeakable act committed by our ancestors. The amusement park was the epicenter of this darkness, and I knew I had to confront it. With trepidation coursing through my veins, I pushed open the rusty gates, their screeching protest echoing through the empty expanse. The air grew thick, suffocating, as if the park itself was aware of my presence. The rusted Ferris wheel creaked ominously, its broken spokes reaching out like skeletal fingers. The decaying roller coaster loomed above, a twisted metal serpent poised to strike. I ventured deeper, my footsteps lost in the symphony of silence. The carnival games stood frozen, their prizes long abandoned. The distorted mirrors reflected twisted versions of myself, distorting reality and unsettling my mind. Every step I took felt like walking through a maze of nightmares, the dark history of my family woven into the fabric of this forsaken place. The whispers reached my ears, carried on a breeze that seemed to emanate from the very heart of the park. Echoes of laughter and joy mixed with anguished cries, as if the souls of the past were trapped within these crumbling walls, their torment echoing through the ages. Shadows danced at the corners of my vision, mocking me, playing tricks on my sanity. The haunted carousel beckoned me closer, its music box melody eerily sweet. I approached cautiously, drawn to the faded horses frozen in mid-gallop. As I reached out to touch one, the carousel jolted to life, spinning with a ferocity that defied its decay. The horses' eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, their mouths twisting into grotesque snarls. I stumbled back in horror, my heart pounding in my chest. A forgotten memory surfaced, like a shard of broken glass piercing my mind. It revealed the unspeakable act that had plagued my family for generations, an act of unspeakable cruelty and darkness committed within these very grounds. The curse had bound our family to this place, its tendrils snaking through time, demanding retribution. The curse had festered and grown stronger with each passing generation, feeding on the pain and suffering of our ancestors. Now, it hungered for my soul, eager to claim the last remaining link in this macabre chain. Fear mingled with determination as I realized that my only escape was to confront the curse head-on, to unravel the dark secrets that had plagued my family for so long. In the heart of the amusement park, I discovered a hidden chamber, a forgotten sanctuary beneath the ruins. The walls were adorned with symbols and incantations, ancient words of power etched into the stone. With trembling hands, I pieced together the puzzle of my family's dark legacy, revealing a ritual that could break the curse once and for all. As the moon cast an ethereal glow over the abandoned amusement park, I stood at the center of the chamber, surrounded by the remnants of my family's torment. With every word I spoke, every sigil I traced, the curse weakened, its grip on my family's legacy loosening. The ground trembled, The very fabric of reality strained under the weight of the curse's demise. At last, a surge of energy burst forth, shattering the chains that had bound my family for centuries. The amusement park groaned, its structures collapsing into the dust of forgotten nightmares. The curse, the dark legacy, was finally laid to rest. As I emerged from the ruins, the first rays of sunlight kissed my face. The weight of the curse lifted from my shoulders. I gazed at the remnants of the abandoned amusement park, no longer a place of horror, but a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Yet, in the depths of my heart, I knew that the dark legacy would forever be etched in my memory. The horror that I'd faced, the secrets I'd unearthed, would forever haunt my dreams. But I stood tall, knowing that I had broken the cycle, that my family's dark legacy would end with me, buried within the ruins of the past. I hesitated for a moment, my trembling hand clutching the mouse as I prepared to click play on the video file that had haunted me for weeks. It was a chilling piece of evidence, the very footage that exposed the truth about my missing sister, Emma. I had to see it, no matter how terrifying or gut-wrenching the contents might be. The room around me seemed to darken as I hit the play button, and the screen flickered to life, revealing a grainy black and white recording. The date stamp indicated it was from the night Emma disappeared, deep in the heart of the dense woods that surrounded our childhood home. The camera bobbed up and down, suggesting it was being held by someone in a state of panic. The footage seemed to emanate an eerie aura, as if the very air within the room had grown colder. I watched with a mix of dread and fascination as the camera's shaky movements captured glimpses of gnarled trees, their twisted branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the sound of distant footsteps, each one growing closer. My heart pounded in my chest as the camera abruptly turned, revealing Emma's face. She looked terrified, her eyes wide with fear and her pale lips trembling. She appeared disheveled and disoriented, as if she had been running through the woods for hours. My mind raced with questions. How did she end up here? What happened to her? As the recording continued, Emma's pace quickened, the camera following her desperate sprint through the tangled undergrowth. The scene was reminiscent of a nightmare, with shadows dancing around her, amplifying her terror. Her panicked breathing echoed in my ears, almost suffocating me. Suddenly, the camera jolted and dropped to the ground, capturing only a chaotic blur of leaves and grass. The audio, however, remained intact, and the sound of heavy breathing filled the room. I strained my ears, hoping to hear some clue, some indication of what had happened to my sister. A guttural growl, low and menacing, reverberated through the speakers, sending shivers down my spine. It was a sound no human could make, a beastly presence lurking just beyond the reach of the camera's lens. Panic gripped me as I realized that whatever Emma was running from was dangerously close. Then, silence. The camera lay still, abandoned on the forest floor, the only sound the gentle rustling of leaves carried by the wind. I wanted to scream, to rewind the footage and uncover the horrifying truth, but the screen remained frozen. The nightmare had abruptly come to an end, leaving me in a void of uncertainty. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, but Emma was never found. The chilling video footage became my only connection to her, a haunting reminder of the darkness that had claimed her. Each night, I would lie awake, tormented by the unknown, my mind conjuring up the most gruesome possibilities. I had seen something in that video, something beyond comprehension. It wasn't just a recording of my sister's disappearance. It was a glimpse into a world where nightmares held sway. The truth it exposed for me was far more terrifying than anything I could have imagined. To this day, I still search for answers, haunted by that fateful night and the chilling video footage that revealed the unfathomable. It serves as a constant reminder that sometimes the darkest horrors are the ones we can never truly escape. I always had a fascination with the supernatural, the eerie tales of haunted houses, cursed objects, and vengeful spirits thrilled me to the core. Little did I know that my curiosity would lead me down a path from which I could never escape. It was a cold, rainy evening when I stumbled upon an old, dusty antique shop hidden in a narrow alley. The shopkeeper, a frail old man with hollow eyes, welcomed me with a toothless smile. His hands trembled as he pointed toward a small, worn-out diary on a shelf. The whispers of darkness reside within its pages, he muttered, his voice quivering with an ominous tone. Beware, for it chooses its victims. Intrigued and enticed by the shopkeeper's warning, I decided to purchase the diary. As I held it in my hands, a shiver ran down my spine, and an uneasy feeling settled deep within me. Ignoring my instincts, I brought the diary home. That night, as the clock struck midnight, I sat alone in my study, the flickering candlelight casting eerie shadows upon the walls. I opened the diary cautiously, feeling an inexplicable sense of dread. The first few pages were mundane, filled with random musings and scribbles. But as I turned to the next page, my heart skipped a beat. The words on the page seemed to rearrange themselves, forming a chilling message. I see you. A shudder passed through me, but curiosity consumed my fear. I continued to read, page after page, as the diary's sinister secrets unfolded. Its words seemed to know me, revealing the darkest corners of my mind and whispering my name from the shadows. Night after night, the diary's grip tightened. Its pages oozed with malevolence, drawing me further into its clutches. I became obsessed, unable to resist its haunting allure. Sleep eluded me as the whispers grew louder, tormenting my mind and distorting my reality. Soon, I lost track of time and reason. I was consumed by paranoia and dread, my world crumbling around me. Faces in the shadows seemed to sneer, and disembodied voices echoed throughout my mind. I could no longer distinguish between the diary's words and the voice in my head. My friends and family grew concerned, their worried gazes following my every move. But I couldn't let go of the cursed diary that held me captive. Its power over me was relentless, its hold unyielding. One fateful night, as I sat in the dimly lit study, the whispers reached a crescendo. The diary seemed to writhe in my hands, its pages filled with frantic, nonsensical scribbles. Fear gnawed at my soul, and I knew that I had to break free from this living nightmare. Summoning every ounce of courage left within me, I grabbed the diary and made my way to the attic. In a desperate act, I set it ablaze, watching as the flames devoured its malevolent essence. The whispers grew frantic, their cries piercing through the crackling of the fire. Yet, I stood resolute, determined to sever the ties that bound me. As the diary turned to ashes, a sense of relief washed over me. But deep down, I knew that its dark influence would forever haunt me. I had glimpsed into the abyss, and it had left an indelible mark on my soul. To this day, I live with the echoes of those whispers, a constant reminder of the cursed diary that whispered my name from the shadows. I often catch myself glancing at the burnt remains, wondering if I truly escaped its clutches, or if it continues to lurk, waiting for another unsuspecting victim to unleash its horrors once again. I woke up with a start, gasping for breath as sweat dripped down my forehead. The nightmare that had plagued me all night still lingered, sending shivers down my spine. It was a recurring dream, haunting me for weeks now, and it always ended the same way, with the forgotten photograph. I tried to shake off the unsettling feeling as I stumbled into the kitchen to make myself a cup of coffee. The morning sunlight streamed through the window, casting long shadows that danced on the walls, but even the warm glow couldn't dispel the unease that had settled deep within me. As I sipped the hot brew, I glanced around my modest apartment, searching for some semblance of normalcy. Photographs adorned the walls, capturing moments of joy and laughter, memories frozen in time, or so I thought. But one photograph, hidden away in a dusty corner, held a secret I could never bring myself to face. Curiosity gnawed at me, as it always did. What was in that forgotten photograph? What terrible secret did it hold? I had tried to forget about it, bury it deep within the recesses of my mind, but the nightmare kept resurfacing, reminding me that the truth was still out there, waiting to be uncovered. With trembling hands, I reached into the closet and retrieved the old shoebox. It was the repository of forgotten mementos, a time capsule of my past. Among faded letters and trinkets, the photograph lay in wait, its edges yellowed with age. I held my breath as I pulled it out, my heart pounding in my chest. The image before me sent a chill down my spine. It was a picture of a dense forest, the trees twisted and contorted like gnarled fingers reaching out for unsuspecting prey. But it was the figure standing in the center that froze me in terror. It was me. In the photograph, I stood amidst the darkness of the woods, my eyes vacant, devoid of life. I wore a wicked grin, a twisted reflection of myself. How could this be? I had no recollection of ever being in such a place, let alone posing for this horrifying picture. Doubt consumed me, eating away at my sanity. Was it a cruel prank? A fabrication? Or was there a part of me that I had repressed, locked away in the deepest recesses of my mind? The nightmare taunted me, echoing my thoughts, tormenting me with the truth I refused to accept. Days turned into nights, and nights into weeks, as I delved deeper into the mystery that plagued me. The photograph had become an obsession, a dark spectre that followed me wherever I went. It whispered secrets in my ear, its presence seeping into every corner of my life. I began to question my own sanity, unable to trust my own memories. Shadows danced in the periphery of my vision, and every creak and whisper echoed with sinister intent. Paranoia took hold, consuming me until I became a mere shell of my former self. The world around me warped and twisted, mirroring the dark depths of my mind. Faces distorted into grotesque masks, and familiar places became labyrinths of torment. Reality and nightmare blended together, blurring the lines until I no longer knew what was real and what was the product of my shattered psyche. In my desperate search for answers, I stumbled upon a forgotten journal hidden beneath a stack of books. Its pages were filled with cryptic writings and sketches, each one more disturbing than the last. It was a glimpse into a mind unhinged, a testament to the horrors that lurked within me. And there, amidst the ramblings of madness, I found a passage that sent a surge of realization through me. It spoke of a forgotten time, a hidden part of my existence, a part that reveled in darkness and reveled in chaos. The photograph was a gateway, a portal into that forgotten world, and I'd unknowingly opened it. Terror consumed me as I realized the truth. The forgotten photograph had revealed my darkest secret. There was a monster within me, a side of myself that I had tried so desperately to suppress. And now, it threatened to consume me, to drag me down into the abyss of my own twisted creation. As the nightmare continued to plague me, I knew there was only one way to escape the clutches of my own monstrous self. I had to confront the photograph, to face the darkness head on, and find a way to seal the door that I had unwittingly opened. But in the depths of my mind, a voice whispered, tempting me with the allure of the forbidden. It promised power and freedom, urging me to embrace the monster within. And as the lines between reality and nightmare blurred, I couldn't help but wonder, was it really a nightmare? Or was it a revelation of who I truly was? The forgotten photograph had opened Pandora's box, and now I was left to face the consequences of my own dark secret. Whether I would emerge from the depths unscathed, or succumb to the horrors that awaited me, only time would tell. But one thing was certain, my world would never be the same again. I woke up, drenched in sweat, my heart pounding furiously in my chest. Another nightmare. I had been haunted by the same terrifying figure for weeks, trapped within the confines of my dreams. But now, it seemed, that malevolent presence had broken free, its spectral form lurking in the real world. I dragged myself out of bed and stumbled towards the bathroom, desperately splashing cold water on my face, hoping to wash away the lingering fear. The mirror reflected a face etched with exhaustion and anxiety. Dark circles framed my bloodshot eyes, evidence of sleepless nights haunted by the unknown. As I stepped out of the bathroom, an icy draft brushed against my skin, causing a shiver to run down my spine. The atmosphere in the house had changed. Shadows danced in the corners, elongating and distorting, as if mocking my feeble attempts to rationalize what was happening. I tried to dismiss it as mere imagination, but deep down, I knew something was horribly wrong. Throughout the day, a sense of impending doom clung to me like a second skin. I could feel eyes boring into me from the darkness, a presence that seemed to follow my every move. The air grew thick and suffocating, a tangible weight pressing down on my shoulders. I tried to occupy myself, to distract my racing thoughts, but the ghostly figure loomed large in my mind. Nightfall arrived, and with it came an inescapable dread. I retreated to my bedroom, drawing the curtains tightly shut, hoping to keep the outside world at bay. I lay in bed, clutching the covers tightly, my mind racing with questions. What did this spectre want from me? Why had it chosen me as its target? As exhaustion claimed me, I slipped into the realm of dreams once more. But this time, it was different. The nightmare wasn't confined to the depths of my subconscious. It bled into reality. The ghostly figure stood at the foot of my bed, its ethereal form irradiating a malevolent aura. Its eyes, empty voids devoid of life, stared into the depths of my soul. I tried to scream, to escape the clutches of this otherworldly presence, but my voice failed me. Fear paralyzed every inch of my body. The figure moved closer, its presence suffocating me, crushing my chest. It whispered words I couldn't understand, an unearthly language that seeped into my very being. Madness threatened to consume me. Morning came, but the terror remained. The lines between waking and dreaming blurred, and I questioned my own sanity. How could I escape something that existed both in my mind and in the real world? Desperation clawed at me, urging me to find a way out of this living nightmare. Days turned into weeks, and I became a mere shell of my former self. The ghostly figure continued to haunt my dreams, its presence growing stronger with each passing night. I sought solace in the daylight, but even then, the boundaries between the real and the surreal blurred. I knew I couldn't keep running, couldn't keep hiding from the darkness that lurked within and without. It was time to face my tormentor head on, to confront the ghostly figure that had torn apart my life. With a trembling hand and a heart heavy with fear, I made my way into the darkness, prepared to discover the truth and banish the nightmare once and for all. But little did I know that the real horror was yet to come, that the ghostly figure was merely a harbinger of something far more sinister. The veil between the realms had been torn, and as I ventured further into the abyss, I realized that the true nightmare had only just begun. I couldn't resist the allure of the mysterious house on Elm Street. It stood there, looming in the darkness, its broken windows and sagging roof a testament to its long-forgotten past. Rumors of a deadly secret whispered through the town, but curiosity got the better of me, drawing me closer to its foreboding presence. Little did I know that stepping foot inside would unleash a terror that would slowly drive me to the brink of madness. As I entered the house, a shiver ran down my spine, and the air grew heavy with an unsettling stillness. The hallway stretched out before me, its walls adorned with peeling wallpaper and the echoes of long-lost footsteps. Every creak of the floorboards felt like a heartbeat, beating in time with my increasing anxiety. I ventured deeper into the house, compelled by an invisible force unable to turn back. Each room held a new horror, a new revelation that gnawed at the fringes of my sanity. Shadows danced along the walls, their tendrils reaching out, threatening to consume me whole. The whispers grew louder, filling my mind with their malevolent chorus. They taunted me, whispered secrets I dared not comprehend. The house had a voice that burrowed into the darkest corners of my mind, slowly unraveling my sanity. I tried to block it out, but its persistent presence became an inescapable nightmare. As days turned into nights, sleep became a distant memory. My mind was plagued by visions, twisted and distorted, blending reality with the realm of nightmares. Faces contorted into grotesque masks of terror, and every sound became an echo of impending doom. The house became my prison, its walls closing in on me with each passing moment. I discovered secret passageways and hidden rooms that held the remnants of unspeakable horrors. The more I explored, the deeper I fell into the abyss of madness. Time lost all meaning. Days bled into weeks, and weeks into months. I no longer recognized myself in the mirror, my eyes hollow and haunted, my once vibrant spirit shattered into 1,000 broken fragments. The house had claimed me, body and soul, but it was the whispers that broke me. They grew louder, their voices merging into a cacophony of despair. They told me of the house's secrets, of the dark history that stained its walls. I could no longer discern reality from delusion, trapped in a never-ending nightmare. And then, in a moment of clarity, I realized the truth. The house on Elm Street wasn't haunted by ghosts or demons. It was a reflection of my own tormented psyche. Its deadly secret was the darkness within me, the repressed fears and traumas that had festered over the years. In the end, it was my own mind that drove me to the edge of madness. The house was just a vessel, a mirror that showed me the horrors I had long ignored. Now, I am trapped forever in the depths of my own psyche, haunted by the echoes of the house on Elm Street, my sanity forever lost in its twisted corridors. The sinister whispers in my head had haunted me for as long as I could remember. At first, they were nothing more than faint murmurs, like distant echoes in a forgotten labyrinth. But as the days turned into years, the whispers grew louder, more persistent, and infinitely more terrifying. I tried to ignore them, to drown them out with mundane distractions, but they refused to be silenced. Their haunting cadence invaded my dreams, seeping into the deepest recesses of my mind, a constant reminder of their insidious presence. I sought solace in the company of others, hoping their voices would drown out the whispers. But even amidst the cacophony of everyday life, the whispers persisted, their dark melodies blending with the humdrum rhythm of reality. One fateful night, as the moon hung heavy in the sky, the whispers reached a crescendo. Their words slithered through my consciousness like serpents, filling me with a sense of dread and curiosity. They spoke of forgotten memories, buried deep within the recesses of my mind, memories that held the key to a horrifying revelation about my own past. Driven by an insatiable need to unravel the truth, I embarked on a journey into the darkest corners of my mind. Each step was accompanied by the whispers, growing stronger with every passing moment, their malicious intent palpable. The whispers led me to a long abandoned house on the outskirts of town, a dilapidated structure cloaked in shadows. With trepidation gripping my heart, I pushed open the creaking door, and the stale air of abandonment enveloped me. The house seemed frozen in time, a relic of forgotten nightmares. As I ventured deeper into its decaying chambers, the whispers became more frenzied, their words a feverish chant. They guided me towards a hidden door, concealed behind a crumbling bookshelf. With trembling hands, I pried it open, revealing a narrow staircase that descended into an abyss of darkness. Heart pounding in my chest, I descended into the depths, guided solely by the haunting whispers. Each step felt like an eternity, the air growing heavier with each passing moment. The darkness seemed alive, breathing and pulsating with unseen malevolence. Finally, I reached the bottom, and a dim flickering light greeted my weary eyes. The whispers urged me forward, their urgency now reaching a fever pitch. I followed the light, step by agonizing step, until it revealed a hidden chamber. Within that chamber lay the truth I'd unknowingly sought. It lay in the form of old photographs, yellowed and tattered, and a diary stained with the weight of untold secrets. As I examined each image, the whispers transformed into a cacophony of voices, my own voice echoing through the abyss of my mind. The photographs revealed a life I could not remember, a life of unspeakable horror and unsolved mysteries. They depicted scenes of violence and darkness, acts that I could not fathom committing. The diary, filled with cryptic entries, told tales of madness, of a fractured mind struggling to piece itself together. In that moment, the sinister whispers revealed their true nature. They were not external voices, but fragments of my own fragmented psyche, clawing their way to the surface. They whispered of a past I had suppressed, a past filled with darkness and unforgivable sins. The truth unfolded before me, shattering the fragile illusion of sanity. I was the architect of my own torment, a vessel for malevolence beyond comprehension. The sinister whispers were the remnants of a fractured self, a twisted mirror reflecting the horrors I had inflicted upon the world. And as the whispers consumed me, their macabre symphony growing louder and louder, I realized that the true horror lay not in the past I had forgotten, but in the depths of my own fractured mind. I wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in cold sweat. My heart pounds against my chest like a drum, echoing the fear that grips me. I've always had a sense that something wasn't quite right in my home, but tonight, that feeling has escalated to a whole new level. My mind races as I lie there in the darkness, my eyes darting around the room. I can't shake the sensation that I'm being watched. It's a presence, an eerie awareness that I'm not alone. With trembling hands, I reach for the bedside lamp and flick it on. Desperate for some form of comfort, I gather my courage and slowly make my way toward the source of my unease. The attic. The wooden staircase creaks under each step, matching the erratic rhythm of my pounding heart. The hatch to the attic sits ominously above, as if mocking my hesitation. It's time to confront my fears, I tell myself, even though every instinct screams at me to turn back. With a deep breath, I pull the cord and the attic door creaks open, revealing a darkness that seems to swallow the light from the hallway. As I climb the stairs, the musty scent of old memories and forgotten possessions assaults my senses, blending with a putrid odor that sends shivers down my spine. I reach the top and step onto the attic floor, my gaze sweeping across the space. My eyes widen in horror as they land on the creature lurking in the shadows. It's unlike anything I've ever seen. Gaunt, with matted fur and glowing, malevolent eyes that bore into my soul. Its elongated limbs contort unnaturally as it shifts, its movements an unsettling blend of grace and malice. I'm frozen in fear, my mind unable to process what I'm witnessing. How long has this creature been here, watching me? I can't recall the exact moment it began, but I realize now that it has always been there, lurking in the corners of my life, feeding off my fear and growing stronger with each passing day. Its gaze never wavers, a silent promise of torment and suffering. I can almost hear its whisper in the back of my mind, a haunting voice that taunts me with the darkness that lies ahead. It knows my deepest fears, my vulnerabilities, and it revels in the power it holds over me. Night after night, I lay awake, paralyzed by the creature's presence. Its influence seeps into every aspect of my life, twisting reality and turning my own mind against me. Shadows dance on the walls, morphing into grotesque figures that claw at my sanity. Every creak, every rustle of the wind outside becomes a terrifying harbinger of its arrival. I've tried to tell others about the creature, to seek solace in their understanding, but they dismiss it as mere paranoia. They can't comprehend the horrors I've witnessed, the monster that haunts me day and night. I'm trapped, isolated in my terror, with no escape from the creature's grasp. And so, I continue to live in this nightmare, locked in a battle for my own sanity. The creature in the attic watches, waiting patiently for the day when it can claim its final victory, when it can consume every ounce of light left in my soul. Until then, I am left to endure the unending torment, a prisoner in my own home, forever haunted by the creature that has become my shadow.